Hi, my name's Gary Trottier, and we're developing some ideas for our beginners class in turning. One of the things that we like our beginners to understand is the nature of the blanks that they're working on and how it affects the turning. So this blank, you can see the bark on the outside of the tree, and this is in vertical position. And as the tree gets moisture from the ground, it has a system that draws the moisture up through what we call straws, and so the straws are not out on the side as much as the ends of the straws are at the top and the bottom, and that changes the way the wood reacts to your gouge. So you want to think of your blank like this, and as it turns, you can see the straws, and then the sides of the straws, and then the tops of the straws. So when the bowl's in this position, you'll get a lot of tear out, and when your gouge is in this position, nice and smooth. Same thing happens if you have glued up wood. Okay, when you have glued up wood, this is where the straws will interact with your gouge, and of course the smooth part will cut easily. So if this were chopped, glued down, part of your bowl would be easy to cut, and part would be difficult and tear out. So those are some points to keep in mind. That's why we have different cuts that we use, smoother cuts and rougher cuts that could take more wood of a wood curl each time. So with that, we want to start to show you some of the cuts, and the first cut will be the roughing cut. You got to cut that.
3 o'clock.
I want to demonstrate to you about the 4 components of making a cut. This piece of PVC is used to demonstrate a cutting gouge, which you see beside right here. With the gouge has the flute up, and the PVC has the flute portion straight up. So the pitch refers to how the gouge lays. So this would be a pitch at 12 o'clock or straight up. This would be a pitch at 90 degrees or 3 o'clock. And then halfway between 90 and straight up would be 45. So there's a 45 pitch, 90, 45. So your pitch is just slightly off 90. Now the handle is the other thing that we're concerned about. And there we go. So if the handle is horizontal, it would be straight off the tool rest like this, as opposed to the handle being going down. And right about here, the handle will be at 45. And then up a little bit, the handle will be at 30. And then we're back to horizontal. So the roughing cut, as you can see on your handout, the pitch is 45. The handle is horizontal. And then there's where the edge touches the wood. And you can see on this case, it's this little red spot. It's not the whole, this is the wing. It's not the whole wing. You don't use the whole wing. So you only use a small portion of the wing. And if you move the gouge away from you, that's a push. If you make this cut moving the gouge towards you, you turn this back over to 45 in the other direction and pull it towards you, and use the same part of the wing. So those are the 4 components to worry about: pitch, handle, position, edge, which is where you're intersecting the wood, and then the direction pushing and pulling. Now these cuts have a lot in common. Many of them use the same cutting edge on the flute, and many of you use the 45 position. So that we're starting with the roughing cut, and we're going to have you work on that till you reach competency, and then we'll move on.
Hi, I'm at Orecchio. and Gary Trottier, myself, and Gary Kenning are teaching this beginning course. You should have received a list of cuts that we want you to learn. It's a composite sheet, and that should be by email. Gary just talked about grain and wood, and now we're going to try to illustrate the cuts one at a time. If you'll notice by looking at your composite sheet, each cut has 4 components to it. The first component is referred to as pitch, and pitch is the angle at which we hold the gouge itself. So if this were our gouge, then this would be a horizontal pitch with the flute pointing straight at 12 o'clock. And if we turn this 90 degrees with the pitch pointing at 3 o'clock, then that's a completely closed flute. This would be an open flute. And it doesn't matter which direction you're cutting in. If you're cutting to the left, this is open. If you're cutting to then the red edge will be down and the black edge will be up. If you're cutting to the right, then the black edge is down and the left edge is up. And again, this is a 45-degree position. This is completely open. This is completely closed. Our first cut is referred to as a roughing cut because the object is to take wood away and form the shape of the bowl without really giving a lot of consideration to how smooth the cut is. Obviously, you want to try to make it smooth so that it's easier to turn with, but the roughing cut is done, and if you look at your sheet, it's done with the pitch at 45. Again, that's this direction. And it's done with the handle horizontal, meaning the handle down, the handle's horizontal. And our next component on our composite sheet is the edge. It's done with the, on the sheet, it says left wing, but we should note it can be either left wing or right wing, depending on the direction you're going. In my case, I've got the handle under my arm. I'm going to be cutting off now the top of the left wing. And if you look at the bigger model, you're going to be cutting off this smaller portion of tip. So let me have actually in this roughing cut right off the left edge in this case, or the red one, and up at the top part of the tool. We'll now put the tool on, and the handle is going to be horizontal. In my case, it's tucked into my side. We're going to be cutting with this portion of the left wing, and we're just going to, tool rest is going to be taking all the abuse of the wood turning into the tool. And you're going to be scraping to some extent, but again, we're forming the bowl. So we'll turn the lathe. A quick comment on speed. There are turners who turn very fast. There are turners who turn very slow. There's no right or wrong. There are some times when you want to use a faster speed for a certain kind of cut. But for our purposes now, we're going to use a speed somewhere in the range of 500. We're going to make a roughing cut. Whoop. To lift the rest will be about a half an inch or a finger's breadth finger's width from the surface we're cutting. If in fact we want to position it so that we can take our cuts in this direction, then we can move it so that we get support. Again, the tool is horizontal. We'll turn our speed to about 500. We'll take our first roughing cut. Then we'll take another one. Again, off that top edge. I'm not taking any pressure back. It's being pushed down into the rest. And we can reposition the rest. By the way, the tool rest keeps the edge of the tool at a
Thanks. All right, I'm going to demonstrate for you the positions for the slicing cut. And as you look at your handout, you'll see that the slicing cut has a pitch of 45 degrees. So same as the roughing cut, we're not going to be wide open flute straight up. We're not going to be a flute at 90 degrees, which is closed. We're going to be halfway. So there's our 45, same thing we're using before. You want to stick with that. And the next thing you want to take a look at is the handle position. And on the roughing cut, you just learned the handle was straight out horizontal. But the slicing cut, we're just going to drop that handle a little bit, and we're going to enter at about 35 degrees. The edge, we're going to use the same edge exactly that we used with the roughing cut. And again, the direction is we could push it in this direction, or we could turn the gouge over, put it in the same position, and pull it towards us. So those are the 4 slicing cut criteria.
Okay, Gary showed you the positioning and the handle, the PVC, the pitch. Let's go over them with the gouge in hand. Number 1, in terms of the pitch, we're going to be using a 45 degree pitch in this case, or the pointing somewhere between 3 o'clock and 12 o'clock. The handle is going to be down 25, 30 degrees. So the handle is down. The edge we'll be using, in this case you can see the left edge is the edge we're choosing to use, just like on the PVC, and we're using this portion of that edge. We're never using a tip to make a cut. We're using this portion of the edge. And in this case, I'm going to be pulling this cut because it's a more comfortable way to do it. If I had to turn the thing over, the gouge over, this would be awkward. This is comfortable, gives me support. On this one, want the tool rest so that the gouge is cutting about on center, which is usually most of the time. And so again, pitch 45, handle 25, 20 to 30 degrees down. The edge is that left edge, and the cut is a pull cut. Why do a slicing cut? Because what we see with a roughing cut is we're scraping away wood, but with a slicing cut, we're slicing that wood away, cleaning up the rough cut. So we're going to make a slicing cut across these ridges. I've got the tool handle down. I'm going to be using that left edge. Okay, let's go to a scrape.
Cut. And before we get there, I want to tell you again about the roughing cut being a very fast cutting technique. It's very damaging to the straws in your workpiece, and so it causes tear out. The slicing cut, the number 2 cut you learned, is really to come back to make a nice light cut, and it cleans up the straws and it cleans up the tear out. So it's more of a finishing cut. Now we're going to go on to what's called the scraping cut, number 3 on your handout. Again, we're looking at pitch, handle, edge, and direction. So with my big PVC, we'll have it in this position, is straight up, 180. This is 90. This is 45. But on this one, we want to be more closed. The handle needs to be horizontal. So last time your handle was down. Now we're coming back to straight out. And the cutting edge is a little different on this one. Let me just tip it a little bit. And we're going to use this whole edge, about 75% of it. The direction can be push or pull. And we use this for flattening. So we draw this across the wood to remove wood and flatten the face of your tenon, or maybe flatten the face of your blank before you start doing the hollowing. So those are the positions, and Ed's going to come on and demonstrate how to cut with the gouge.
Okay, so this is going to be the scraping cut. We're going to follow our guidelines. The flute will be rolled over to about an 85-degree position, which is, and the handle will be horizontal. We're going to be using more of the edge. Instead of the tip, we're going to use more of the edge. As Gary had said, 75%, but it can vary. But the bottom line is you're using more of the edge. It's a scraping cut because there's no slicing involved. I am going to be letting the bowl move into the edge, which scrapes it, basically. And the advantage of this cut is you can take away a fair amount of wood, and you can push, or you can pull, and you can push it. So let's try that one. As Gary said, you can use it to flatten the bottom. So again, on the rest, flute, pitch is about 80 degrees, 85 degrees. I'm using a bigger portion of the edge, and the handle is horizontal. And I'm making a pull. Okay.
One is number 6, shear scraping. The purpose of shear scraping is to give a very fine, very clean edge to the exterior of your bowl. Shear scraping and scraping are a lot alike. The differences are that in shear scraping, you need to drop the handle to 45, and the pitch is going to turn all the way up to 85 degrees. And you can push or pull. And it's just a very light cut, and it's done very, very soft against the wood. It's not deep, so it travels across the wood very lightly. So there is your shear scraping finish cut. Ed will.
Okay, so back to the gouge. The flute will be, the pitch will be almost 85 or better. And actually in a shear scrape, the wing that's on the top ought to be almost touching the turning bowl. shouldn't be too frightened about that, because if that wing does touch, nothing much is going to happen. But the object of this cut is to take a very fine shaving off the bowl to smooth out the grain and the other tool marks. So the pitch will be close and maybe even greater than 80 to 85 degrees. The handle will be well down, with the tool perhaps at 45. If you look at our sheet, we've mentioned that the angle will be 45. Truthfully, at times can be higher, at times can be lower. We're using a good portion of the wing that's touching the bowl. In this case, it's the left-hand wing. And we can either do that with a pull cut positions. Okay, so let's go with our 4 position rules here. The first is the pitch of the flute. It's going to be 85 or greater. In fact, almost to the point where it's touching the bowl, the right-hand wing in this case, the upper wing. Our handle is going to go down to 45 degrees, and we're going to be cutting with, in this case, the left-hand wing, with using a good portion, 75% or so of that wing for cutting. We are going to be able to pull that or push it, depending upon, as we watch the wood, which way seems to develop the smoothest type of finish. And the other important thing is that there's almost no pressure on the wood. It's all the pressure is down on the rest. All right, so again, flute closed. As I say, if you touch that upper edge, nothing really happens. Just don't get the cut you want, but it's not going to catch. It's going to be almost closed. The handle is going to be down. The cutting edge will be 75% of it. And in this case, we'll try the pull direction. Again, all the pressure, or almost all of it, is down on the rest. Now, if you can focus on the shavings coming off, you'll see these are very fine shavings. This is not a shaping cut. You should have the shape you want before you do that. And you can do this. You can then push it too. In this case, it feels like it's a little better, and I'm getting little fine shavings if I pull it. So I'll continue to do that direction.
Lori, we're on cut number 4, which is the interior roughing cut. So now we're going to start to hollow the bowl out, and there's a special cut to use there. This interior roughing cut has a lot in common with the roughing cut and the slicing and the scraping in that, in the slicing, in that we're going to be using this section of the lower wing right here. So the other thing that Ed will show you when he demonstrates this cut is that you start on the far outside and you sweep into the bowl using that lower wing. So the 4 rules are: the pitch is going to be 45, like I'm holding it, so that would be wide open, straight up, 45, 90. We're going to be at 45. The handle is going to be at horizontal, so won't be down or up. It'll be straight out. And then the edge we talked about, it'll be this wing. Direction is push. So we'll be sweeping and pushing into the center of the bowl.
Okay, we're going to demonstrate the interior roughing cut. And again, roughing is exactly what it means in the exterior. We're not making a perfect surface. We just want to get the shape and the form. We follow our rules. The pitch is 45 degrees. The handle is horizontal. The portion of the cutting edge we're using is a small portion up in the front here on the left wing, since we're cutting in that direction. And the in this case, the roughing interior cut is always a push cut. Now, the only thing you'll see a little different here is that because the lathe is in the way, I've got to move my hand and handle outside and over the ways differently than I did with the others where it was up against my side. So, the bevel, this part of the gouge, which we demonstrated, this part right here, is telling you the direction you're going to be cutting in. So in this case, I'm going to be taking something in the direction that you see the pencil going. I'm going to be holding my handle horizontal, using the front part, small part of the edge, and I'm going to be pushing. And as Gary had mentioned, I'm also going to be sweeping around with the handle. And again, you don't want to be too greedy and take too much of a cut. Okay.
I'm going to show you the interior bowl scraper, which is a different type of tool. And as you can see, it's a flat tool with a rounded front edge. This tool cuts with a little burr that is sharpened onto the very edge. The tool sits flat on the tool rest, and the handle is lifted up slightly. And that's very important to lift it up slightly. Also, this tool can be turned on edge, and it's just cut along the edge like that. So but I think the beginner way to use it is flat against the tool rest. Now, the tool's been marked. I don't know if you can see the black dots in the front of the tool. So the thing to learn is that we don't ever cause the entire half circle to touch the wood at the same time. We want to use a small portion and move the circle around so that a small portion touches the wood. Intersecting a large portion of the tool edge will give you a catch. It'll tend to pull the handle up and away and come away from the wood. So let me turn it on and show you a cut. By the way, the purpose of this cut is to give you a smooth interior, and also this tool smooths it out, and also can be used to deepen it. So up handle, intersect a small part of the tool, just rub it up against the wood. Now, if we want to cut along the outside, we would just use this corner and start turning it into the wood. Goes both directions. And you can see the curls that it will make, once you get to that sweet spot. Still on edge, the cut looks like this. Very large gouge for a small bowl. So that is the scraping, the use of a scraper.